Welcome everyone to Circle City Conversations. Thank you for joining me for our conversation today. Thank you to our sponsor, Hearst Lamontes, an Indiana law firm representing injured Hoosiers and their families for over 50 years. I'd like to thank everyone for their continued support. I'm here today with a husband, a father, a Christian attorney, and community leader. All that was on the website there. Right. So, Cameron, I got to say your last name, Fathauer.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I mean,
how do you pronounce it?
Fathauer.
Fathauer.
Fathauer. Yeah.
Fathauer.
Yep.
Okay. So the with the H is silent essentially.
I guess. Yeah. It's
maybe
a
where the
long-standing debate on how to really pronounce it. The original German spelling was with a V, which is way better. My wife would have been, much more inclined to marry me if she knew it was spelled that way. Well, I mean, I will say that because she didn't tell me that she had an issue with the spelling of my last name until after we got married. She's
really?
Like, I do not like the spelling. Or not the spelling, but the pronunciation.
Yeah, how to explain it to. She has to explain it to people.
Wait, right? Yeah. Oh, everybody's like, I don't know how to say it. I don't know. And I joke. I say, well, it's the way you don't want to pronounce it.
Right.
Fathauer. So.
Fathauer.
Right.
So.
Well, and it's funny we're doing a podcast because my oldest brother, I have two older brothers. Oldest brother Bryce, about a few years ago, he said we should start a podcast called The Fat Hour.
The Fat Hour. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah. So you work with Matt Schad at Schad Law.
Yeah.
And
very blessed too. Yeah.
He's a great guy. We'll talk a little bit about him later on. But you're a Kentuckiana trial lawyer down in New Albany, and you love fighting injustice and helping people, right?
Oh yeah.
So, and you have a very interesting story about how you started in the practice of law. But before we get there, okay, let's talk a little bit about you and, kind of where you're from and things like that. Where'd you go to high school, college? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'm Columbus, Indiana native. That's where I'm from. That's pretty much where I was born and where I was raised until I got married at the age of 18 and moved to Louisville, Kentucky. But I'll get to that later. So I went to high school at Columbus North High School in Columbus, Indiana, and was a Bulldog, and always big basketball player, very committed to basketball since I was a youth, and that was my goal, and I was always doing that. And after high school, I went to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. I switched out of the seminary track and got my undergrad at the college there called Boyce College, and got a degree in humanities, business minor, and then matriculated straight into law school at Indiana University, Maurer School of Law in Bloomington. I know I'm jumping around here, but
you're fine.
I don't know. Did you plan to talk about my book?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because Matt Schad wrote the foreword.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said that he was surprised that I wanted to go to law school because law school is a very unspiritual thing.
Yes.
That's what he said.
I was reading on your website that, did Matt tell you that he wouldn't wish law school on a dog he doesn't like?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
He said.
Yeah. But I mean, that's pretty common. It's pretty common. A lot of lawyers are like, don't do it.
Yeah. And you know this, you've been out. It's not, going to law school is not like the practice of law.
Oh yeah.
It's very different. I was just recently, I actually talked to your partner. I talked to Matt because I wanted to explore AI in researching novel issues.
And he's great for that.
Yeah, he's great. He's a genius at that. And so you do this practice, you practice in this area of law, personal injury, and you do some other things, but especially in the personal injury arena, there can be a lot of repetition. And when you do it as long as I've done it, you've seen a lot of different things. And so I was faced with a very novel issue that I've never dealt with before. And I called Matt, talked to him a little bit, and did a trial of a Westlaw program, essentially AI program. And that was helpful. I thought that was helpful in finding research, because that goes back to the law school aspect, right? The research part.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, so you said you were married at 18. Did you meet your wife in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
she's 2 years older, so we didn't meet like at North or anything like that. It was actually another ministry connection in a sense, because my whole family was kind of undergoing a reformation of our theology and thinking about God around the same time. And it was my brother, this is how I put it, but he was, I guess, flirting with a girl on Facebook that went to this small church outside of Columbus, Indiana, in Hartsville, Indiana, which is actually where the Wright brothers.
Really?
I think that's where they went. There was a college there, Hartsville College. It was this tiny little college, but the Wright brothers went there.
Yeah.
Anyway, very small area, rural area, and so my brother wanted to go to church with this girl, and he went to her church, and he said, wow, this is great preaching, great message. And so we all checked it out, and we started going, and a few weeks into it, I noticed this beautiful blonde girl in the front row, and she stood out in lots of ways, not just because of this, but she did stand out because most of the people there were over the age of 65, and she was just this beautiful young blonde girl, and I just pursued her, and she's the first girl I ever dated, and the last, because I married her.
Yeah, and now, I mean, you got 4 kids now, right?
Yep,
yeah.
all with the same woman. That's what I said.
Yeah.
because I said I fathered 4 children in law school, and I'm like, yeah, all with the same woman.
Yeah.
Law school's only 3 years, and then you do the math, and you're like, oh, there's twins. It's not. No, there's triplets.
Triplets. That's what I was gonna say. I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and we had 2 within about 16 months of each other, and that was difficult, but I couldn't imagine triplets. I have a friend with triplets.
Yeah.
So you're raising all 3, that's 3 different babies that need to eat roughly when they're babies, like little babies, infants, they're eating once every 2 to 3 hours.
Oh yeah. It's busy. It's busy. But the triplets would have been easy if we didn't already have a 1-year-old.
Right.
Because the 1-year-old needs very different things than newborn.
Correct.
And so it was very distracting, and demanding in that sense. But it was all in providence and timing, because the lockdown with COVID in 2020 happened pretty much right when the triplets were born.
Okay.
Which was perfect timing, because we basically, on a leap of faith, moved to Sellersburg, Indiana, down south by New Albany. We bought a house there. Mm-hmm. And we did this we closed in March of 2020. So really right before the lockdown.
Right.
Yeah, right at that time. And we didn't know my law school was going to go remote. So I was going to be driving like an hour and 45 minutes to Bloomington, Indiana. Yeah. And I was just going to make it work. But because of the lockdown, law school went remote for the last year and a half, which was great for that reason, so I didn't have to drive, but also so I could be home with the kids.
Right.
So it worked out. We were both home and taking care of the kids, and it just worked out really well. Yeah.
Yeah. Having that flexibility, I even see it now with my family working late at night when all the kids go down and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's just been a kind of a normal part of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, you're making me think it's actually easier, I'd say, to have kids during school than it would be during work.
Oh, yeah.
Because with school, you have a lot more flexibility.
Yep.
You don't have clients, you don't have court,
right.
You can't miss those things. And so with school, you can always, there's just a lot more flexibility, I think. And I didn't know that because I was always in school, but once I got out of school and started working as an attorney and all that stuff, I was like, yeah, the school life was a lot more flexible, because I would text people and say, at like 9 p.m., hey, you want to get coffee in the morning? And I was just used to doing that sort of thing because I had so much more flexibility. But now that I'm a working adult, I guess, my wife says, a big boy job as a lawyer, it's like you need to put it in the calendar, like give me a week or 2 in advance.
Exactly. Yeah. So you went straight into law school after undergrad. Mm-hmm. But before that happened, something happened to you that really kind of changed your life. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, there isn't really a little bit to say about it, Alex, but and I asked Emmanuel how much time we have here, because there's a lot to talk about. But there's always, as you know, there's always things people can talk about.
Right.
So it was September 18th, 2015, when I was hit by a car as a pedestrian.
Okay.
I was outside of my parents' home. Technically, I was really outside of their driveway, pretty much, on a longboard, which is basically a skateboard, just longer.
Yeah.
And I was riding it outside my parents' home and hit by a car. The guy was speeding a little bit, but there's the issue of I used to be always so concerned about framing the story, so it made it sound like it wasn't my fault or something. But the issue isn't fault, and we often focus on those things. The issue is, how do I respond to what happened? So I was hit by the car. I was my head and shoulders shattered the windshield of the Lexus, and it was actually my neighbors who found one of my shoes 60 feet up in a tree.
Oh my gosh.
About a week later, and thankfully I landed in the grass, but I was immediately in a coma. I was unconscious. I wasn't breathing and all of those things. And I was actually teaching a little girl, a neighbor of mine, how to ride the longboard, how to ride the skateboard. Yeah. And so she was there, and she was about 6 or 7 years old. And she thankfully didn't see me get hit by the car, but she heard it, which was good because she thought I'd been shot. Okay. And so she ran into her grandma's house and said, Cameron's been shot. Cameron's been shot. And in a small town of Columbus, Indiana, a shooting's a big deal. So all of the police department basically shows up to help me, and the ambulance and everybody. And then they realize they need some bigger power here. So I get lifelined via helicopter to Indianapolis, Indiana, where I spent about 2 weeks or so in a coma, non-induced, at IU Methodist Hospital.
Downtown.
Yep, in downtown. And received tremendous care, and my wife has talked about that. And I'm very blessed. Very blessed to have had that resource and just be where I'm at. But I was in the coma 2.5 weeks, and diagnosed with a severe diffuse axonal brain injury down to my brainstem. And I'm sure you've heard that diagnosis many times before in your line of work. And it was really bad. The reports were terrible, and I lost about a third of my skull. My skull was shattered upon impact. There was actually a piece of my skull on the car, which I didn't find out until I saw the police photos when Matt Schad worked my personal injury case about 8 months after the accident. So
I want to talk to you a little bit about the brain injury itself, because I know that you've really studied this and really dug into it after the fact and after you were done healing. If you could just try to describe, maybe to, like, in layman's terms, what type of injury that was, like what part of your brain, like what happened? Yeah.
So doctors and therapists and counselors kept telling me the same thing. So they kept saying, because of the nature of your injury, the hardest things for you, Cameron, are going to be higher level thinking, executive function, just using my brain, which means my frontal cortex was, the prefrontal cortex area was, which is kind of, I mean, technically the injury was on this side of my head, but with a diffuse injury, we all know what an essential oil diffuser is.
Yeah.
It fills the room, and so the injury, in this sense, fills the brain. And spreads throughout the brain and fills it out. And so down to my brainstem, the injury was affected. But given the frontal nature of it, kind of in this mid-side area, that affects the higher level thinking, executive function parts of your brain, reasoning, higher level thought processes and solving problems and those type of things. And so that's actually why I was motivated to go to law school. And the main part was to take the LSAT, because I thought, man, if I could do that test, I could do anything else.
Oh, yeah.
So, I spent like 6 months studying for it while I was taking full-time classes at the seminary. And this, again, it demonstrates the point that in school, there's a lot more flexibility. I mean, if that's what you're doing, you can really make things work. And anyway, very grueling to study for that test. It was very hard. And I couldn't have done it without my wife, because she was, because I kept wanting to give up, and she just kept encouraging me to keep working on it. Yeah.
Good for
Same
you.
thing with the bar exam.
Oh, that's
a horrible test. Way harder than LSAT. That's a horrible test.
You know what I will say about the LSAT, because especially given your TBI, what they told you, the LSAT is a test that is geared to testing executive function, right, higher level reasoning, all based on multiple choice usually.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that those kinds of standardized tests can be more difficult, right, for people that have had a TBI.
Oh, I'm sure of that. I mean, and some people just generally say, I'm not good on multiple choice tests, right, especially because the nature of the standardized test being, there's multiple options here, and right, one of them's okay, another one's okay, and then this is the best, and you gotta kind of you've got to learn that, and that's a good skill with preparing for law school and preparing for the actual practice of law, is knowing what's the best argument and what's the best solution for my client.
Yeah. So you ended up going to law school. You were a Forrest E. Jump Scholar. Yeah.
Yeah. And all that really meant was they recognized my story, and they saw the skull, and I didn't bring it with me. I wish I did, so that way the camera and all the viewers at home could see it. It's pretty cool. And I know Emmanuel will put up a picture.
We'll put it up
somehow. But well, I just blanked on your question.
Oh, we were talking about you were Forrest E. Jump Scholar.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. And so the Forrest E. Jump Scholar was really just them honoring me in what's happened to me. And that's why the scholarship exists, is to promote people with character and stories of adversity and triumph and things like that. So so it was an honor. They did that. IU Maurer did that for me, and that was actually a very generous scholarship for me throughout all of my law school career.
Yeah. And you also received a scholarship from this law firm, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think it was
it wasn't much.
Well, no, but it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to a young college law student. And I just wrote an essay about the story, and I think it was with highway accidents and things like that. So that was cool. So that's what I told you, Alex, is when you Google my name, sometimes it'll show up an ad for Hirsch Lamontes LLC, and it's in part. So I'm promoting you guys, but don't tell Matt.
No, I won't tell Matt. We'll avoid New Albany.
You got to change your SEO search or something.
It sounds like you were motivated to take the LSAT and to pursue that because you were told that was going to be darn near impossible for you to do. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're not the kind of person that takes being told you can't do something very well, right?
No, I've always been a person who just kind of blazes his own trail. And, do what I feel led to do. Yeah. And I felt very led to go to law school. It was kind of one of these ideas that just popped in my head. And I knew if my wife was for it, that was basically the will for my life. And we were on our first honeymoon in the Bahamas when the idea kind of popped in my head at the hotel. And I thought, man, if Chelsea, my wife, is for this, then that's what I need to do. And I said, babe, what if I go to law school? And she said, that'd be a great idea. It'll be hard, but it's a good idea. And so I started studying for the LSAT. I ordered books like that day. And
really?
Yeah.
Did you talk to Matt Schad about that after you made that decision?
Yes. So he was already working my case, and so that's part of what inspired me is having been introduced to personal injury work and just a lawyer, knowing a lawyer, and I told Matt, and that's when he said, Cameron, I wouldn't go to law school if I were you. I wouldn't wish law school on a dog I didn't like. And we were just talking about this, Alex, and that's why it's pretty common for attorneys to not encourage other people to to go into law school and go into the legal profession, because there is a lot of unhappy lawyers.
Yes.
There's a lot, and it's a very stressful job. It's a very demanding job. And people put a lot of pressure on these guys and gals, and it's for good reason, because it's a very important job. It's a pillar of society, is the legal system. And my wife, being in med school, is kind of the other pillar, medicine and law. Yeah. And so it's very important that people do a good job and they take care of their clients. But that notwithstanding, it's still a lot for people, and which is pertinent to why I'm thankful to be in the position I'm at, not only to be able to help my clients, but also be able to help other lawyers and be a kind of inspiration and on the conversation of mental health. I've got a lot to say about that. I've had serious suicidal, depressive episodes for years after the accident. It wasn't until January 30th of 2023 when I had my last real episode. I haven't had any since then, but it was, and we could talk about that more, and that kind of gets into the book stuff, but
so let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that, especially if you don't do any TBI work or follow up with clients that have had traumatic brain injuries, a lot of the things that people don't understand is the mental and emotional problems, issues, whatever it might be, whatever you want to label it, that come along with a traumatic brain injury. For example, I'll send clients off to get a neuropsychological examination, and little did they know that their cognitive functioning has been impaired, because of a brain injury that they had. So tell me a little bit more, is that something you see pretty common with TBI cases, where you've got a completely other aspect, a whole totally different aspect of mental health or emotional injuries?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, because I started a nonprofit called Voice of TBI, a 501c3 in 2017, the summer of 2017. And that got me introduced to a lot of other people with TBIs, and especially their caregivers. And I say that because my message and purpose of the organization changed and evolved over time. But it's important to recognize both parties need cared for, not just the survivor of the TBI, but also the person caring for the survivor. But on the survivor, him or herself, the brain being injured can just lead to all sorts of problems. You don't really know, because the brain is such a centerpiece for identity and personhood that we like to relate to, and that we find so much of our that we derive so much of our existence from, is that brain. Now, with that, having a brain injury can include all sorts of cognitive impairments, but I personally had the most issue with the emotional impairments and the mood and the depressive episodes. I mean, I never was suicidal, depressive before the accident. I was cloud nine, happiest guy alive. Everything was great. Just constantly believing an optimistic kind of spirit about everything. And it was contagious for other people, and people like that, and people like being around people that are happy. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so finding this other darker side of reality was new for me. But my wife, Chelsea, made it clear to me that the accident was good for me, and that it really made me into a whole person, because a lot of people are miserable, and a lot of people have a really hard time with their existence and with life itself. And so me being able to be on both sides of that table with the happy light times and then the dark heavy times, it's helpful, and it provides the biggest thing, of course, empathy for other people, empathy for the human condition, having been there. And other people have said, well, I mean, how can you be sure that you can relate to everybody? And I just say, well, you don't realize how dark it's been for me. And nobody knows how dark it is for anybody, but a former seminary professor who passed away a few years ago, he said to our class, be kind to everyone, because everyone's having a hard time. And I know people have said other variations of that same thing, but it's of immense importance because you just don't know what you don't know. And the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And so you're always in the right to be kind. You're always in the right to be humble and patient and, trying to be as understanding as you can. But back to what you were saying about the emotional and cognitive impairments. And this can happen to people, not just with people with their skull shattered on the side of the road, but with people who have minor concussions.
Yes.
Football players have lots of concussions. And because I know people, and with that and the PI, personal injury side, the issue is proving damages and stuff like that. And that can get really frustrating for people. But that doesn't mean you're without hope and you're without the option to improve your life, but it's the reality of the head injury.
Right. Sounds like your wife is a really smart lady.
She's amazing. Yeah, she's amazing. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking about law school. You were in law school. Eventually you take the bar exam. How was that? What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I took the bar exam and I'll just be frank, and I'm a pretty transparent, vulnerable person anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, as my website blog, CameronFathauer.com points, I mean, it's just some people that have looked at it, they're like, what is this? Just a thing with a bunch of, like, you just talk about random things. I'm like, that's a blog. That's what you do.
That's what a blog is. Yeah. Yeah.
But mine is much more personal and faith oriented in that regard. But like with the accident and everything, see, now I'm blanking on what you just asked me. And see, now, because we're in the conversation of the brain injury, I feel like every time I'm blanking on something, you're going to, and this was how it was with the TBI group, is every time I would forget something, they'd be like, oh, it's because of the brain injury. Or maybe it's just because you didn't sleep because you got triplets.
Right. That's probably
toddlers.
Yeah.
But what was your question you just asked?
Oh, we were just, I was asking you about taking the bar exam.
Right. So, yeah. And I was saying I'll be frank and vulnerable. Well, the reason I said that is because with the bar exam, I was studying for it. So I graduated IU Maurer in May of 2021. Started studying for the bar a month or so thereafter. And it was during COVID still. And so the bar was remote. And the remote bar exam is a horrible idea. Yeah. It's just, I mean, it made sense back then, but I'm just saying, I found the remote bar exam way more difficult than the in-person exam. And
why?
Well, so I'll explain. But first of all, I wasn't even ready to take the test. And I mean, the triplets were about a year and a half. About a year old when I was studying for the bar. And so there was tons of diapers, as you can imagine.
A lot of diapers.
A lot of diapers. And so I was studying for it and I just wasn't ready. And, on Barbary, I was using Barbary. And you have like a percentage of how much you've gotten done. I only had like 49% or 47 or something like that done. And the test was in a couple weeks. And I told Schad, I was like, I'm not ready to take this test. I'm just going to move it to the next time. And he said that I should just take it. He said, you should just do it anyway. And so I took it, and I took it at the office where I had been studying a lot, at the old office in New Albany, Indiana. And I didn't pass. And it was very frustrating. And I started thinking, well, babe, maybe this whole lawyer stuff isn't my, maybe I should go back to trying to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And she did not have that. No, she was not happy about it. She's like, no, I put up with too much for you to go through all this and not become a lawyer. So I started studying for it again, which was really not fun. And I took it in person and got the highest score you can get to, be licensed in all UBE jurisdictions. Yeah. So that was great. So that's how I got licensed in Kentucky so quickly.
Okay.
Because I was licensed in Indiana and then in Kentucky a few months later.
So you're licensed in Kentucky?
Yep.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't I thought you did research on me.
I did.
My slogan is Kentucky and a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
you assumed it's just because of my
Southern
geography.
Yes.
Just where I'm at.
Yeah, because that's Kentucky. To me, that's Kentuckiana.
Right.
New Albany, Clarksville, Jeffersonville area.
Right.
You know, to me, that's Kentuckiana. So I just thought that, I thought that's why that's where that came from. But that's funny. My partner and I, many, many years ago, almost 10 years ago, we had a case down there in Louisville against a big company. So we brain injury case, but where our client, he was on a motorcycle, he was almost killed, and he started to have essentially internal organ failure. And so the University of Louisville Hospital, they were so concerned with his physical injuries that they weren't even really looking at, the TBI, aspect of it. So not to mention, we talked about the emotional mental health issues that come along with the TBI, but then if you have physical injuries, the frustration with not being able to do, a lot of the things physically that you used to be able to do before. I've got a client now, she loved working out all the time, and that's a big thing because she's got both sets, of physical and, emotional injuries. So,
yeah. And with that, Alex, it's well known that a TBI is called an invisible injury.
Yeah.
Because you have the limitations of it without them being physically evident. Like you don't see them as well as maybe someone who has, in addition to the cognitive impairments, but also the physical limitations of they can't walk anymore, paralysis sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a double-edged sword in the sense that, it's great that I can use my legs. It's great that all these things, but at the same time, people don't give me the same kind of pity that they do the guy in the wheelchair as they do, as they would to me if they knew what I was going through and how hard it is for me to think through things, at least the way it used to be. And you're in a constant state of comparison to the BA before accident camera and then the after accident camera.
Yeah.
And constantly in that world. And other people are doing it to you as well. People are constantly kind of just, whether making it known to you or not, that they are thinking about who you were before, at least those who knew you. Yeah. And I'm thankful to have become a lawyer 2 years ago because it's an important title in society and it's respectable. And notwithstanding what's happened to me, people see me in that light, at least people that just meet me now versus when I was in rehab and all that stuff. Right. So.
It's funny. I tell staff here, Emmanuel even knows this. People talk to you differently when they find out you're a lawyer. They treat you differently. They talk to you differently.
Yep.
And then it's unfortunate. Because unless you actually work in the legal field and see what staff does, they are the ones that hold us up. They prop us up. People that hear me talk about what I do, they see that they can hear it. They see the passion. I love what I do. I firmly believe that we are the last line of defense. Our job is to help people and make the community a better and safer place. I have never done defense work, nothing against my defense attorney friends. I am a more of a pure blood myself, pure plaintiff's attorney. Yeah. And because, again, not setting aside internal motivators like the hatred for injustice and disgust for bullies, two things that really can drive me personally, but knowing that we serve a higher purpose and making our community just a better place, So I firmly believe that. So let's talk about some of your practice areas. We talked about personal injury, but I looked on the site and you do some other stuff too, wills and estates. You do some of that work?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. What drew you to that?
Well, mainly because the opportunity was there.
Right.
So Larry Schad, did you ever know Larry?
I don't think I ever had an opportunity to meet Larry.
Well, that's in part because he didn't really do personal injury work.
Okay.
So Matt's dad started the firm, Schad and Schad, and Larry's he was well known in the area, well liked, well loved, and he did a lot more transactional type work.
Okay.
But he would do things like family law as well, but a lot of estate work, wills, trusts, probate, all that, those type of things. And with that, when he passed away, the office would be getting phone calls. Hey, I want to update my will. Hey, I want to update this document. I want to do this. And there was no one at the office that could do that. And so Matt, just after I became licensed in May of 22, after that, Matt said, hey, why don't you start doing this? And so I started doing it and took it over and made it my own thing. And it was great because I combined it with my ministry experience and my theology stuff. So I created an estate planning presentation on wills, trusts, and the like, called Receiving and Returning, based on 1 Corinthians 4:7, where the Apostle Paul asked the church at Corinth, what do you have that you have not received? So we spend a lifetime receiving things, and it's at our death when we have an opportunity to in full return it all. Okay. And so how are we going to do that? The best way is the legal way, through a will, a testamentary device, will, trust, power of attorney, deeds, those type of documents. And so the presentation was very unique and nuanced because, I had the theological spin, but the theological spin was not what you'd expect. And so the presentation focuses on the theology of private property. And so the deeper meaning of what it means to own something. What is ownership? And so the idea that God created the world, and he didn't start by creating the creatures, the man, the animals, the beings on the world. He started by creating a property for everything. Yeah. So the property right comes before everything else. It's another Latin phrase, you probably know this, a priori. So it comes but follows from. So all of our rights today, constitutional rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, those things all stem from the right of private property, because you can't have freedom to speak unless you have a space that's yours. Correct. How much easier it is to be yourself in your own space than it is to be in someone else's. Yeah. So it's one of those implicated rights that no one's really thinking about, and so I was bringing it to attention. And it all plays into estate planning because this is yours. Yeah. Owning what you own and creating how you want to distribute that stuff and control it when you're gone.
Have you found that to be a nice break from the personal injury side? Because it's very emotionally charged over there.
No, that's a great question, because it's true. It's a really nice balance. Yeah. Because especially for me as a younger attorney, I'm a very fast paced kind of person. Yeah. So PI is slow. It is. It's very slow.
It does move slow.
It moves very slowly. And I mean, with estate planning, you schedule an appointment. Here's what they need. Yeah. You schedule a day to sign and get everything done, and it's done. Right. And that's pretty much it. With PI, it can drag on for a while, and so I really enjoy having both kind of running the PI running in the background while I've got the estate clients that, give me the interpersonal interaction that I myself really enjoy. Yeah. I enjoy people, and I'm thankful to be here today and talking with you and Emmanuel and meeting your awesome staff, because I'm very much a people-oriented kind of person, and that's just how God made me, and I enjoy that side of the estate work. And Matt Schad is him and I are kind of opposite personalities. He prefers kind of a more introverted, and so we kind of balance each other well with like me meeting with clients and giving them a good experience with the firm, and him doing his expertise and all the AI stuff. But just he's been doing this a while and he knows what he's doing, and we're a good team. Yeah, yeah. So when you do PI work, it's emotionally difficult because you're dealing with people. Sometimes kids get killed and terrible things happen. So you've got that, and that's hard. That the cases last a long time. And so you're dealing with that for a long time. But then you have
the emotional baggage of the fight, because there's a fight on the other side.
Adversarial.
Yes, it's very adversarial. And so, and for them, they don't carry the emotion and the clients with them. It's just money. It's a number. They want to hit that number or stay below that number. And that's their goal, you know? So for us, imagine you do that, but then you do it for a couple of years over the course of however many clients. So I can see where having a separate kind of transactional practice areas.
Well, you're right. The nature of the clients is different.
Yeah.
Because people that are coming in to get their will or estate plan done are usually people that are in a good enough situation where they can think about these things.
Right.
Because naturally people put this off.
Yeah.
Naturally people are busy enough with life. This isn't something you're going to deal with. At least most people don't think they need to deal with it till they're old.
Yeah, exactly.
But everybody should just get it done and have the peace of mind knowing it's done. And done by local counsel. So it really is. Obviously, you can do all your estate planning documents online in a sense. Like you can get a PDF power of attorney form online, but one, it's probably not going to be what it needs to be. And two, the big thing about having local counsel is you've got somebody to talk to and you've got somebody to point to and you've got somebody to go to when there's questions or concerns that come up. Yeah. Or for your kids, someone you trust, someone you like for your kids to deal with when the time comes to distribute everything. But fitting in with what you're saying is the clients in the PI world are very different. Not always, but they can be very different with what they're going through and the trauma of everything. And so, yeah, I think it is nice balancing the two. But I will say I definitely couldn't do it without the Schad Law team and what I have there because they've got their system and they know what they're doing. So I'm able to juggle the two. But it is mentally taxing to kind of switch gears. Like a PI client will call me when I'm focused on an estate with like, or like an estate with seven different properties in different states, and so they're very different legal departments. But they're connected, and sometimes you'll need a special needs trust if you've got a large settlement or something for a client on government aid. And so there's some overlap there, and it's good to build the client relationship like through those presentations because sometimes I'll get a PI client through that. Yeah. People will call me and say, hey, this came up, and I've got some sayings I developed. So because of what happened to me, I became a personal injury attorney, and because of what could happen to you, I became an estate planning attorney. Yeah. And before your last hour, call Fathauer.
That's funny.
And I've got one more. So I do estate planning, I do all that stuff, but if something happens, I don't want you calling the hammer. He's got 4 yachts. I've got 4 tots. And I point at my kids. So,
4 yachts and 4 tots. Yeah. They're like the, well, we shouldn't air that. I've got my own opinions of big advertising firms.
Well, I know it's respectable, you guys. I mean, I joked with Katie when I was here a few weeks ago, and I had to call her. I was like, I can't find this building. The maps say it's over here, and I'm just walking around. I don't see any signs. I don't see anything. I'm like, how do you guys get any customers? There's no big signs, no big billboards or nothing. And obviously you guys are doing great. And so, but it's the model that Schad promotes as well, word of mouth, reputation, which is way more powerful and way more personal. Yes. Which is excellent, and what you just don't get from the big guys, the big advertisers. I mean, they'll get the clients, but it's a different experience. Yeah,
it's organic, is what it is. Right. It's your best friend or your sister or mom saying you should call this person because they helped me or helped so and so. It is, and that's going to be the first person they call. Right. Yep. You know, so it has become more. Advertising in particular and marketing has become much more competitive. A lot more attorneys do want to do this type of work because you can make a really good living. I like to call us sometimes case surgeons. You know, we will take a case that is very difficult and complicated, and we will perform surgery on it and turn it into something. So which is, I think, a benefit to just being laser focused on doing injury type work, like what we do.
And did you and Bill, Mr. Hurst, did you guys start the firm together?
So Bill Hurst has been practicing law for over 50 years. So he actually started with Buddy Yosha.
Okay.
Yeah. And Buddy Yosha's son, Brandon, is at Yosha Law Group with another friend of mine, Brian Tisch. And so they had their own iteration back in the late 60s, maybe, I think. And then Bill went with his old partners, Marvin Mitchell, Richard Dick, and Sam Jacobs was there, Jacobs Law. And then they had, those guys did transactional work, business stuff. So they went off and kind of did their own thing. And then in 2015, Bill started the law office of William W. Hurst, which became Hurst Lamontes in 2020, right before COVID.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
in February of 2020, right before COVID hit, we rebranded.
Wow.
Yeah, to Hurst Lamontes.
And so was the advertising model that you guys have today the same as it was back in 2020?
No.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Matt used to spend money on advertising and stuff, but it gets to a point when you're more established.
Yeah, it just snowballs.
Yeah.
And it also depends on your market. I think that's a big thing. You know, if you have a bigger market where more people want to live, or a growing market, that's one thing. And then we do a lot of local work because I'm very big on the Indianapolis community. We're partnering with the Indiana Fever this year, who just drafted Caitlin Clark.
Right.
Yeah. So we were the first personal injury sponsor, and I'm sure that there's going to be a few others to follow.
Yeah.
The Caitlin Clark effect.
Right. No,
yeah.
that's great.
And just a lot of things like that, especially with the Bar Association, because for the most part, when someone's looking for a lawyer, sure, seeing someone on a billboard or having a commercial and that person being top of mind, sure, that does work. But if most people know one lawyer, okay, and that lawyer may be a probate lawyer or a business transaction lawyer, but if those lawyers know me, then when that person goes to ask, hey, you know, my daughter was, you know, broke her leg in a hit by a car on a bike. So who do you call? And then we do a lot of work with the Bar Association. And then also it just goes back, Cameron, to doing good work. You do good work, you do it consistently, you do it for a long time, which you've seen from Matt. The cases come organically, and it doesn't, and you can do extra things like partner with the Indiana Fever and stuff like that, but like what we do, but it really just comes back to the type of work that you do. People know your passion for your work. It's evident when you're doing it and how you treat them. And then you get those people, they become your biggest, they sing your biggest praises, and they are louder and more persuasive than any billboard or commercial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's a good word.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Schad Law and some of the things that you guys are doing over there with AI. Matt he actually did a presentation for the Indiana trial lawyers, and he broke a record. It was the largest attendance for any webinar presentation.
Wow.
It was the presentation on AI.
Need to make sure he knows that.
Yeah. I thought maybe I told him that or emailed him that. I couldn't remember. But yeah, it was almost. Oh,
was it the Zoom one?
It was the Zoom one.
Yep.
It was a webinar. So it was like 300 people. The one before that was like 240. That was the record. So that was very well attended. I called Matt, talked to him a little bit about using AI. I've dabbled a little bit in AI. How has AI made an impact on your practice?
Well, it's an interesting question, and my answer is nuanced from the PI perspective because I do engage in the estate work, and I do kind of handle some miscellaneous stuff. Like I had a trial in Jefferson County, Louisville, in business court.
Okay.
It's a whole separate division. It's I don't like it. I don't like it. It gives too much liberation and freedom to the judge to kind of do whatever he wants. And so it really isn't very effective. And the primary motivation is just to get people to settle. It's with business disputes, and it makes sense in that regard, I guess. But so that's just an example of, I mean, that case was involving LLC with no PI stuff. It's just with dispute over ownership in an LLC. Yeah. And so I'll dabble in other areas that might come, someone might call in, or someone calls me, and Matt just trusts me and gives me the independence to kind of try out different things that I need to. Now, with that being said, and with the transactional nature, there are times when I need to draft something to a client, like a letter saying we talked on the phone about this, and I'm just going over what we talked about to protect myself and to inform the client, especially if it's like some sort of disagreement between the client and myself. And so ChatGPT is like one of my best friends.
Yeah.
Next to my wife. I'm just kidding. No. But ChatGPT is really useful for those kind of tasks, administrative type tasks.
Yeah.
I know you guys have, a bigger firm with assistants and people that can do those kind of tasks for you. But with me and me doing kind of my own line of work, I find it really useful, or to research some general area that I need to, and just see what's going on in the area, to then lend to further research on places like Westlaw.
Right.
And it can really provide the structure and the springboard or the foundation that you need to go further in research or in writing. I love using it if I have a big writing project and I need to just kind of get the skeleton in place. And you just give ChatGPT or whatever the AI software is the basic facts, and I need this, I need that, or compare it with this case, and you can like copy and paste a large portion of a holding and integrate these two together, and it will create whatever you need. And as Matt has said, AI is very much something that we're all still learning. Its capabilities. It's very powerful and very useful. It has more limitations than I think I realized when I first started using it. But the more you master how to use it, the quicker you get things done with it. So I think it's a tremendous resource, and it's really allowed me to handle more cases, handle more clients, whether it's the PI stuff or the transactional stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and you're right, you have to know how to use it.
Yeah.
Because just going into it, assuming that it's going to work out, for example, like any other Westlaw research, project that you're doing, that's not how it works.
Not the same,
yeah. So you are writing a book, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to say about that. The book. And you actually were getting at this earlier, Alex, with the identity issue people have with traumatic brain injuries, or people that go through all sorts of injuries, whether they lose the ability to walk or move certain arms or ligaments in their body, where they just can't do the things they used to be able to do. And so a lot of people can relate to this. The main point of the book is on the identity question. And who am I always? Yeah. Because after my TBI, I had to relearn pretty much everything. I compared it to an Etch-a-Sketch, hit by the car, got a diffuse injury, shook my brain, shook the canvas clean, and it was a blank slate. And now, the friends I once knew were going away from me. The mind I once knew wasn't what it was anymore. And those dreams I had, they had to all be rewritten into a new path for me. And with the nature of that sort of injury, you do kind of have to relearn, I guess you could say, find yourself again. Yeah. And so I put it that way. And so what I was looking for is who I could always be, regardless of what happens to me. Because it's a troubling thing to think my identity can be so contingent upon life's happenings.
Right.
Or, I'm a lawyer. What happens if I get debarred? I'm a husband. What happens if, I'm no longer a husband? Or I'm a father. What happens if I lose my children?
Yeah.
And so we base our identity off of these things, but none of these things are our entire identity. I'm not 100% a lawyer.
Right.
That's not fully who I am. I'm not 100% a husband. That's not fully who I am. I mean, I am 100% in the sense that I am, a husband, but that's not my full identity. It's not wrapped up in that one thing. So the book's entitled Saving the Subject, How I Found You When I Almost Lost Me. So saving the subject, how I found you when I almost lost me. And so it's in almost losing my identity when I found an identity that we could all share and we could always have.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's, of course, an identity found in God and found in the God who never changes, the who never changes. And so it's huge. And so the book's very unique in the sense that I am doing something, it's relatively challenging in the sense that most people, when you write a book, it fits within a certain kind of genre.
Right.
You write fiction, and it's a fantasy of some sort or some sort of fictional account, or you write nonfiction, and then there's all the different types of nonfiction you can do with health, you can do, philosophy, you can do science, all these different things. But my book kind of is a kind of hybrid, a smorgasbord of genres in one book. And I originally wrote the book in article format. So I say that because we are lawyers and we write Article 1, Article 2.
Right.
And so the book was written so that each chapter, each article could be read in a sense independently from the others. Okay. At least you could get a whole meaning out of that one article. You don't have to read the other ones. And so Article 1 is a more philosophical, kind of lays the foundation for what I call the subject-object framework. And that's the huge framework in the book. And it's very simple. There are subjects in the world and there are objects. Okay? There are objects. There's no dispute. There's no dispute, at least there shouldn't be, that this water bottle is an object, that this coffee mug is an object, that, this table we're at, this floor, we're just surrounded by objects. But where is the human subject? Where is the subject in a world of objects? Because it connects to the brain injury, because I had to figure out how I'm more than a brain. Because if all I am is a brain and my brain is injured, then that means permanent discouragement. Yeah. Like, what hope is there for me if the only thing that makes me is broken? Right. And so finding the subject, which isn't an object, but how? Like where do I find that, and where do I have that? All this to say, I don't know how much more you want me to go into. I'm very happy to keep talking about it. But so the first article, philosophical. The second one is personal. I talk about the depression and suicidal and stuff, some of which is on the blog already. And really just trying to show, article 1 is showing that the human is more than an object. He doesn't act like everything else in the world. And then the second one is showing that the human is a confused subject. He's, he experiences turmoil around him and within himself. And so he needs directed. And so this gets at Article 3, which is probably, I think, the most important chapter in the book, because it's very much about the issue of authority and how things are happening around us and who's really controlling us and who are we really submitting to. And so that's chapter 3. And then chapter 4 is getting at that, what is man, the ontological question of man. Chapter 5 is getting at where we're going based on who we are, or who we think we are affects where we go. And then chapter 6 is how to save the subject, saving the subject. And then chapter 7, last chapter, is called the subjective life. Yeah. And I use the analogy, and this will be the last thing I say about it, unless, of course, I'm happy to take your questions. But this analogy helps you understand what I mean by subject and subjective. So imagine 10 people standing in a hallway staring at the same painting.
Yeah.
So everyone's looking at the same painting, the same object, okay? But there are two different reactions to the painting. So on one extreme, the person says the painting makes her feel ugly, broken, and ashamed. And then on the other extreme, the person says the painting makes him feel glorious, strong, and proud, and beautiful. And the other 8 people fall somewhere in between these two extremes. And the question is, well, you have to get more information about the people in that hallway. The people that responded negatively to the painting did not know the painter.
Okay.
They had no knowledge of the context in which the painting was painted. They had no background information about the painter. They didn't know anybody else that knew the painter. All they had was the object.
Okay.
Just the objective object. So that's all they had. Whereas the people that responded positively to the painting knew the painter, or they knew someone else that knew the painter, or they had studied a lot about the painting and its background and its history. And so they're the ones who responded more positively. So the subjective view is not the people standing in the hallway. It's the painter.
Right.
So because the objective view is the people that responded negatively, and all they see is the painting and they're all negative about it. Whereas the subjective view is the view from the painter's perspective.
Right.
And so, and that all gets at the invincibility posture, like how different things are when you see it, when your mood and your view of life is not changed by the objective world around you.
Okay.
But your subjective view is strong because it's surrendered to a higher subject.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I know that was a lot of random.
No, you're fine.
But it all fits together. The book comes out late summer.
Late summer, 2024?
This year, yep.
All right.
And I already told Katie I'm inviting your office I'm going to have a big release party,
Oh, very cool.
At Schad Law in
nice.
New Albany. So
absolutely. I love going down there to Southern Indiana.
Yeah.
Reminds me of why I moved up here. So, so what's next for you, Cameron? What's next on the radar, aside from the book being published? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are you thinking? Do you have plans?
Do I have?
Do you want me to do another interview? I'm happy to do one.
Are your plan is keep growing your practice on both the personal injury side and the wills, probate work side? Yeah.
I really enjoy, like I said, doing both, and I enjoy. And this is when I spoke at ITLA last November. During the Sunrise program, I spoke. And I was emphasizing that subjective personal view, which you guys uphold really well here as well. And I really enjoy, again, meeting with clients because I do get to share my story, and that really resonates with a lot of people. Yeah. And so I don't know 100% what the future will look like for me, but I am really excited to publish the book, and I think it will provide another level of connection with clients. Yeah. Because I'm very vulnerable in the book, and I'm very honest about what I call the human condition and the struggles. Because again, I went from being the eternal optimist to a very different, darker world. Right. And I say life after the coma was dark, but life after the coma was even darker. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how all that kind of fits together, because I'm going to really hype up the book. And I mean, I've been hyping up the book, and it's going to be a big public event. And seeing how all that connects to my practice and with the PI stuff. I mean, because I am getting busier, I am probably going to have to start narrowing in on things. And I get why people do that. Right. Right. Well, because you still want to provide the same level of service. Right. It gets a little out of hand when you're constantly bouncing back and forth with different things. So. Yeah. And also, it's good to have a lot of cases, but it's hard to move cases when you have, too many. Mm-hmm. So if any of our listeners wanted to get a hold of you, if they're looking for maybe a Kentucky lawyer or a lawyer down there in Southern Indiana, New Albany area, how can they get a hold of you? Yeah. Well, my email is is cfathauer@schadlaw.com. And I mean, I don't know if Emmanuel puts any of this information on.
We link it. Yeah.
But I do have a unique name. We joked about that, but it has its benefits, because when you look up my name, Cameron Fathauer, on Google, you'll see the Schad Law website. You'll see those links, but you also see my personal website, CameronFathauer.com, which has stuff about the book and about pictures of the accident scene and all that stuff. So, and I try to be as accessible to clients as I can. I think that's really important. Is I usually give most of my clients my personal cell, which might again be something that over time it might get a little out of hand. But I definitely do that for my estate clients, wills and trusts. So that way, because those people are usually in a good place where they can get things sorted out pretty quickly. Yeah.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Had a great conversation.
Thank you, Alex. No, pleasure to be here. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. Bill added me on LinkedIn, but I've never met the man. I'd love to meet him.
One day you'll be able to meet him. He's like
he's probably not here
like
that
a
much.
Unicorn.
Yeah. But thank you for having me, Alex. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
I do.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Circle City Conversations podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more future conversations.